As we've been reading in the Old Testament about King Saul and David, we've come to the point where Saul is seeking to kill David, after which the Lord places David on the throne. I thought it might be good to read a bit of one of the Psalms of David. This is Psalm 21, verses 1 through 7. As you hear this, listen for what David identifies as what comes from God and not himself. David ascribes to God strength and salvation. David knows that his very life was saved by God from the hand of Saul. And it is for us also that the hand of God has saved our very lives from the death of sin. Like David, our salvation is ascribed to God alone. In fact, David 2 times in these 7 verses credits God with salvation. And the second time, David makes clear that David's glory is great only through God's salvation. And he goes on to declare that God has not only given him salvation, but also so much more, seen in the splendor and majesty that God gives to him. Do we not recognize in our own lives that God has also blessed us with salvation and so very much more each day? We have, as David says in verse 6, the joy of the presence of the Lord. David says that it is the Lord's presence that makes him glad. When we find ourselves down or discouraged, rely on these words of David to remind you of God's great grace in our salvation and the gift of the Holy Spirit that remains with us throughout all our days on earth. In the closing verse, David says that he will not be moved because of the steadfast love of the Lord. That is for us as well. In the cross of Jesus Christ, we see that steadfast love of God poured out for us. Let this psalm cause us to rejoice with David and, like him, trust in the steadfast love of the Most High God. Hear now Psalm 21, verses 1 through 7. O Lord, in your strength the king rejoices, and in your salvation how greatly he exults. You have given him his heart's desire, and have not withheld the request of his lips. For you meet him with rich blessings. You set a crown of fine gold upon his head. He asks life of you. You gave it to him, length of days forever and ever. His glory is great through your salvation. Splendor and majesty you bestow on him. For you make him most blessed forever. You make him glad with the joy of your presence. For the king trusts in the Lord, and through the steadfast love of the Most High he shall not be moved. Thanks be to God for these words of his daily comfort and assurance. Goodbye.